Hey everyone, welcome to the second part in our three-part series on CI/CD capabilities with Azure Pipelines. Really excited to come to you one day late. Wasn't feeling really well yesterday, but had lots of really exciting content to show you. So glad to be able to show it to you only one day later instead of a whole week or a couple weeks later. Today we are going to automate our code using Azure Pipelines and using YAML. We're going to build upon everything we've done in our very first session where we learned how to build our pipelines manually using YAML the first in our first session, and we are going to take that knowledge and build a pretty sophisticated pipeline to take a .NET application, which I took a really fun .NET console application, and we're going to create an exe that we could just give to somebody that they could run on their machine, whether they have .NET installed or not. We're going to make it a standalone single file executable, and then we're also going to create a NuGet.NET tool that they can just install on their machine from the command line and just run kind of like a command line interface tool, like using .NET tool. So this is going to be pretty exciting. This is going to be a place where we can use one Azure pipeline job to package our application two different ways, and another Azure pipeline job to distribute it to a package manager. So this is just a good way for us to flex our muscles, use our YAML skills to get comfortable with CI and Azure pipelines. All of this um, basically building up our YAML skills so that we can get to our third and final session where we're going to be deploying to cloud services. All right. For there, basically housekeeping. Couple slides in this session, not a ton, lots of code. I'm Sydney Andrews, Azure MVP, Microsoft Certified Trainer. We have chat here on YouTube. Looks like somebody already posted in the chat. That's Matt. He's always here on our sessions. Yeah, please, you got questions, post them in the chat. If you feel like I haven't answered your questions, you got questions after the session. Sometimes we kind of randomly peruse through the YouTube comments, so we try to answer them there. If you feel like we didn't get to your answer in the YouTube comments, msusdev at Microsoft.com. You'll see me post it here and there from time to time. msusdev at Microsoft.com. We try to answer questions wherever we can. We try to open source our presentations too. GitHub.com/msusdev end-to-end CI/CD. All the slides you see on your screen, all the demos I'm showing, all the source code, they're all open source. They're all available on GitHub. And I'm really proud of our efforts to make sure that everything we're showing you is just not a video on your screen. It's something that you can actually just jump in, get hands on, implement yourself, fork, create your own variation of. I highly encourage you to play with it, continue your learning, show it to your own team. Create your own variation of this, take it to your user groups, grow it in your technical community, create your own version of it, create your own YouTube channel, your own Twitch stream, whatever you want to do with it. Go out and have fun. That's the beauty of doing something like this. All right, let's talk about the roadmap. So we had our first session, Introduction to Azure Pipelines. This video is part of a YouTube playlist. So if you missed that first session, that's a great thing about YouTube. Just hit the back button, go back and watch that video. I would love for you to stay with us live, but if you got to, just go back, check that one out. That's where we actually looked at the YAML syntax. So if you've never seen it before, you could just go in, check it out, learn that syntax from scratch. It was really useful for me to just go through a pipeline line by line and understand exactly what each line does. Session two, that's today. We're going to take everything we learned about the YAML syntax and actually code a pipeline that'll take a .NET console application, and we're going to take that console application and we're going to try and build two mutations of it and release one of those mutations to NuGet.org. So I feel like this is going to be like a really helpful exercise to help us understand some of these CI concepts. They're going to be really interesting. The next session next week is going to be deploying our code to Azure using Azure pipelines. We're going to take a ASP.NET web application. We're going to Dockerize it. We're going to push it to Azure. And so there's going to be some interesting concepts building upon everything we learned in session 1 and 2. You're going to already see it on the homepage for this YouTube channel. A playlist with all these videos already included. So if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do set up the notifications. Do everything you need to do so make sure you're keeping up with this series. If you're looking at this months down the road, all these videos, we're trying to make sure they're buttoned up so you can watch them in sequence. All right, 3 things I really want to hit today. I'm going to just do a really quick review of what we did in video 1, not in depth. If you want to see the full hour of deep dive of Azure pipelines, please, just go back and look at that first video. It's on the YouTube channel. No problems. Last video in the playlist. Then I'm going to show you how we automated quick build for our console app. Just going to demo it real quick. A really simple console application that takes some data about real estate for office rentals, and allows you to filter down a list of data based upon the amount of seats in these office rentals. And then we're going to automate the release of a CLI version of that to NuGet so you can install it as a .NET tool. So, something that I have a lot of fun working with. So let's just real quick look at just remind ourselves of what it's like to work on the Azure pipeline. So I'm going to open up my browser real quick, and I have this repo MSUS dev examples, and I'm going to just create a really quick repo. Call this March 9th, and it's going to be just a public repo with a README file. Hit create repository. In this repo, I'm going to just open it with GitHub Codespaces. It's just really fun to be able to just open this in the browser, not have to do any cloning locally, anything like that, and get the coding right away. So it's going to just spin up a code space so I can just start editing. Again, I haven't done anything super technical yet, so not expecting any questions just yet. But if you ever do have any, just throw any in the chat. All right, got a code space open. I am going to .NET .NET version. I believe .NET 6 is running on this. Yep, .NET 6. .NET new console to create a new console application here. .NET add package colorful.console to create just to add a really cool NuGet package that allows us to write ASCII art and add colorful printing to the console window. And then we're going to add a getignore file, .NET new getignore. And that's all I need. So for our program.cs file, using static system.drawing.colors, I think is what I want. Using console equals colorful, spell it correctly, .console. That way I don't have to type out colorful.console each time. So console.write ASCII hello, comma audience, exclamation point. And instead of having to type in color.red, I'm using static. So I should just be able to type in red. And that should be it. I've hit .NET run. I did this right. Hello, audience, printed in red. Wonderful. Everything's really good. This is more than enough for me to do a demo. So I'm not going to type out this YAML file from scratch. I'm going to copy the result of session 1. So I'm going to create a nice little build.yaml file. So YML. And I'm going to copy our resulting YAML file from session 1, just to review what we did in our first session, which was we created a nice simple file. It had a pipeline. From our pool of agents, we're going to look for a pool that has a VM image running Ubuntu 2004. It has a single stage. There is a flatter syntax if we don't want to strictly define the stages, but we're being verbose on purpose because we want to understand what's going on. When I work on dev teams, we like to be very verbose, and I like to do the same thing here. So single stage, continuous integration, display name for that stage, continuous integration, so I get really good UI in my interface. Single job, the identifier for the job is called build, and the display name for that job is called build. We're going to run within a Docker Hub container, Microsoft Container Registry.microsoft.com, MCR, .NET SDK, 6. So that's .NET 6, the latest .NET, the newest, coolest. 4 steps. All 4 of them are just running a cross-platform script. .NET version, checking the version of .NET, even though we know it's going to be 6. .NET Restore, .NET Build, and .NET Run. Really cool fact. If you're running .NET 6, you actually don't need to run all 3 of these. Just because .NET Run will infer that you want it to .NET Build. .NET Build will infer that you want it to .NET Run. So just for fun, we'll delete these 2. So really just, and we can infer .NET version because we're controlling a container. So we're just going to run the simplest pipeline in the world. Just run the thing. .NET Run. Okay. So initial commit. It's really not an initial. It has a README file. I'm going to go ahead and delete that README file. I don't need it. So initial commit. We'll commit that. Sync changes up. And since we don't have an Azure pipeline yet, nothing has really happened here. Our GitHub repo has been updated because we synced the code from our code space, which has its own, local repository, to our GitHub repo. So we'll go ahead and create a Azure DevOps org. We'll call this March 9th. We'll make it public. And I'll create a pipeline over here, and I'll tie it to this GitHub repo. So go ahead and create a pipeline. And I'm just going quickly because this is just a quick review of what we did in session 1 before we get started on today's work. I will filter to all repositories just to make it quick and easy to find this. And then I'm going to just say, hey, I already have a YAML file. Go to my main branch. That's that build.yaml file. It's going to read that wonderful YAML we just wrote. Hit run. Barring any syntax errors, we're going to just jump in, get excited, because that job is pending. That means no YAML syntax errors. Well, fingers crossed. I'm waiting for the blue to indicate no YAML syntax errors. There we go. All right, agent request is already running. It found an agent with Ubuntu 2004. It's initialized our container. Docker's pulling down our container image. Wonderful, wonderful. Next step is going to check out our code from the GitHub repo. This is going to run our .NET application. Then the post job cleanup, which is specific to Azure pipelines. It ran our .NET application. Now, obviously, the color part of it is probably not going to translate, but the actual ASCII art, it's not the greatest because of WIF stuff, but it's close enough. I'll give that a pass. So this is our review. We're up to speed. This is what we did in session 1. Let's start having fun with this. So I'm going to show you what we're working with today, and I'm going to throw URLs. By the way, all the URLs for everything we're doing is in the description box. But we have this MSUS Dev examples organization on GitHub. And I have lots of sample code here that you're going to really love. There is a Contoso Spaces .NET console app, sample application here. Now, this is a pretty cool application. What it does is it allows you to query for rental office spaces. Now, there's kind of a nested format. You have an office building, and that office building has one or more offices that you could rent. Now, if you've seen our JavaScript and GitHub Actions webinar, you've probably seen a web version of this. In our third session of this series, you'll see the web version of this. But today we're going to focus on the console application version of this. So I'm going to use this template to create a GitHub repo. So I'll say use this template. And I'm going to, in this MSUS Dev examples organization, create a repo called March 9th Part 2. And hopefully I remember that name for the rest of the day. Make this a public repo, and I'll create a new repo for this template. And this is wonderful. This template is available to all of you. Matter of fact, I am going to show this on your screen for just a second. For those who are interested, it's just popped up on your screen. This sample repo is pretty cool because you can go in and spin up as many repos as you want from it so that you can go and play with this really cool application. So just I'm going to hide that. And then what we're going to do is we can open this in a GitHub code space, but I'm going to just clone this to my local machine. So I'm gonna just copy this and I have Windows Terminal running on my local machine in an empty folder called dev. And I have Visual Studio Code open in that same empty folder called dev. So just git clone this GitHub repo, which is the March 9th part 2 that I just created from that template. And we use dot. That just means clone into the current folder. All right, we're done cloning. And now I have this application. For the .NET developers amongst us, we are just going to walk through it real quick. Super simple stuff. Uh, the CS project file is a .NET 6 application. It's using Colorful Console and a couple other stuff. I was really using a really cool thing called Dragon Fruit. It allows you to parse the command line. So it's really, really cool. Basically, it allows you, instead of using args, to use parameters on the main entry point for your command line application. And then you can actually use flags when you're using a .NET command line application. So when you call this console application, I can press in a flag called seats. And what this does, it allows us to filter the list of items to print out by the number of seats. So let me show you what that looks like in action. So if I say .NET Run, it's going to just print out all the seats in my list. It's a flat list of seats. So we have the addresses and then the list of rooms based upon how many seats each of the rooms have it. No. But if I say .NET Run, and I have to escape any flags for the .NET CLI, and then add my own flags. So .NET Run seats. I only want rooms that have at least 4 seats. Will only return buildings that have rooms that have at least 4 seats. I can do the same thing with 5. Only return buildings that have rooms that have at least 5 seats. Now, there are no buildings that have rooms that have at least 6 seats, I believe. So if I do this, it should return an empty list. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. It's a nice little command line application. It's open source. Feel free to go, dig into it if you're interested in it. It's out there just so you can see a really quick example. I mean, this is minimal code. There's JSON file for the data, a C sharp class. It's not a class; it's a record for the location and room data. And this program file, this is all the code. That's it. So if you want to build your own command line application, please feel free to dig into this and look at how it works. I want to take all the credit for it, but system.command line and system command line Dragonfruit did all the heavy lifting here. All right. Enough about the command line application. You didn't come here to learn about command line application. You came here to learn about Azure pipelines. So we have this really, really cool application, and we want to build an exe that our dev team can maybe download and test out locally. So in the .NET world, we need to use the .NET publish command. So we could go to .NET publish documentation and publish this as a single file executable. So if this is in the description box for this YouTube video, by the way, but there's lots of information out there about this. So just going to our slides and talking through this for a second. .NET single file applications, they're really an attractive option if we want to deploy console applications. We can distribute them on GitHub as releases. We can embed debug files in them. We can compress them if we want to reduce the size of them. We can even do AOT compilation if we want to improve the performance of them. Now, there's lots of ways to configure single file publishing. We can add single file publishing settings to the project file, either directly in the project file itself or using the .NET publish command. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I want to show you how to do this through Azure pipelines. So through .NET publish command, we can set up where we're doing release versus debug config. We can determine whether we want you to have, do you want the user to have .NET installed or not have .NET installed, and that greatly dictates the size of that .NET exe. Because some does it need to carry .NET with it. Also, the OS and architecture for the executable. Is this a WinX64 executable? Is this a WinX86 executable? Is this a Linux or a Mac OS executable? For the project files, are you publishing a single file? Are you publishing multiple files like the DLLs and all the other stuff? The AOT compilation we just talked about. Compression, there's a performance cost for compression. So all these types of things you have to think about when you're deciding how you're going to publish, and they all impact how we do that Azure pipeline. I bring all this up because these are the type of things where you're building that pipeline out, right? So if I'm playing around locally, I have to build out a .NET publish command. It might look like this: .NET publish configuration release output package self-contained runtime WinX64 enable compression single file publish ready to run. That's the AOT setting, by the way. And debug type, that's wherever you include the PDB files within executable. All right, let's actually see that in action. I told you not that many slides, but I did want to actually walk through the academic side of that. So, run into Windows Terminal, a .NET publish configuration. We're gonna make this a release publish. We're gonna output to the out folder. We're gonna make it a single file. Now, this should fail for a couple reasons. The main reason is if we make a single file actually, let's just publish the out folder. I want you to see what the result of a normal publish looks like. That will succeed. And that's because when we publish the out folder, we get all of this. We get DLLs, we get EXEs, we get everything possible necessary for this application to run. But essentially, this is about the same as what you get in the bin folder. So if we go to release or debug, I mean, it looks almost exactly the same as what you get in the bin folder. I mean, for if I'm giving somebody on my dev team or my test team something to run for the command line app while we're in a very early preview phase, this is useless. If I give them a folder full of all this junk, they're going to look at me like I'm crazy. So when I'm buttoning things up, especially when we're early phases, long before we get to signing and certificates and things like buttoning up the executable, we want to start thinking about what that looks like. So we start adding in settings. The first one being publishing it as a single file. So publish single file. And by the way, there's a documentation page that talks about this in depth, and that's in the description box under this video. I highly recommend you read this. It's lots of good discussion on this, and I was one of the people who was yelling at the product team, probably very unfairly, when they were in the design process over this, because it took way too many years for this to come about. So a publish single file equals true came about, but then that created another problem. What single file? Because what a executable is changes depending on which operating system you're on. Executable, even in the land of Windows, is different depending on which version of Windows you're on, let alone if you're on different operating systems. So if I say publish single file, all of a sudden you get an error. Okay, in order to publish a single file, then you need to tell me which runtime you're targeting. And then we get into runtime identifiers. Now, this is not a .NET webinar, so I'm not going to bore you with runtime identifiers. But basically, .NET needs you to tell it what OS and um excuse me, which OS and processor architecture you're targeting. So just for today, we're just going to target Win x64. So as many Windows operating systems as possible, 64-bit. That's going to be enough for us to get away with it. I'm going to give you just one more flag, and then I think we have enough to cook. And that's self-contained. This flag is really fun. This flag, if enabled, tells .NET to package .NET in this exe. So the target operating system does not need to have .NET installed. Now, there might be some other minor dependencies it needs installed. You'll see this a lot in the Linux world. It might need some other like globalization dependencies installed, but it does not actually need .NET installed if this is a self-contained package. With that said, it will be a massive package because it's going to carry a lot of stuff with it since the target exe, since the target computer won't have .NET installed. All right, hit enter. And I probably should have deleted that out folder so you could see what it looks like without let me start this over because you can't tell the difference if I don't delete the out folder. So I'm gonna do that one more time. All right, let's look at the out folder. The new out folder now has three things. We We have an exe file. We have the PDB file. That's your debugger, your debugger symbols, all the stuff you need. And remember, we looked at there was a setting to actually embed that in the exe file if you wanted to, and then your XML file that includes your C# comments and documentation. So we now have actual single file executable. I mean, it really is a single file executable. If you really wanted to, you could say out slash Katoso spaces console exe seats 5. That's executable. It's real. It's alive, and that's a pretty cool thing about it. But I mean, what use is that if we can't build it using if we can't build it using our YAML file? So let's go ahead and build this using a YAML file. So we're going to create a brand new pipeline YAML file. We're going to call this integration.yaml file. And I'm going to show you that this is going to look very similar to the YAML file we had before with some minor differences. So we're going to start with a VM image, but this time instead of a specific version of Ubuntu, I'm just fine saying Ubuntu latest. Put a little bit of trust in the system, right? For stages, I'm going to just call this first stage CI. For the display name, it's going to be the same. Continuous. And I'm looking at my notes because that's the one word I will never memorize how to spell in my entire career. Continuous. Jobs, we'll call this first job build. Display name, build project assets. All right, we're having fun. The container for this build will be mcrmicrosoft.com .NET SDK 6.0. So a lot of it is the same so far. But from there, we're going to have some fun. So we are going to write a script. Now, if you remember from our slide, I wonder if I have the slide still up. We have this massive script. This is not a one-liner. And if I try to write this as a one-liner, I think all of our eyes will water. So let's not do that. Well, one of the cool things we can do is that we can use this vertical rule, and we can just move 2 spaces over and create a multi-line cross-platform script using slashes, and that just makes it so much easier to read this. And Visual Studio Code will give you syntax highlighting since it understands that syntax. So .NET Publish, we'll do same thing we did before: configuration release, output folders out, and we know this will work because our git ignore file already knows to ignore these folders out and package. So we don't have to worry about accidentally checking in something in the out folder and having a conflict. Self-contained, we'll do that. We'll do runtime win x64, um, and we'll go all out. So we'll enable compression. I'm checking my notes. You know what? I'm not even going to risk it. I'm going to copy and paste because in my luck, I will have a typo. So we'll enable compression in single file. We'll publish a single file. We'll do AOT compilation, and we will embed the debug symbols in our exe. So we'll have one exe to rule them all here. And then after all that's said and done, let me make sure this is tabbed over. We will put a nice little display name. Publish. This display name is publish.NET console project. And that's a really great script if I say so myself. So we'll just call this publish.NET console project. Commit this. We made our first commit to our GitHub project. I know we're half an hour into the webinar and we just wrote our first line of code. That's pretty crazy, but that's just how this goes today, right? So we'll just go ahead, sign in to GitHub here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to Azure DevOps. We're going to create a new Azure DevOps project. We're going to call this Contoso Spaces Console. Make it public. I'm going to take a sip of water while I spin it up. Oh, spin up too fast. We'll create a new pipeline. We know how to do this by now, so we'll just hit create pipeline. We will use GitHub as our source. We will hit select. Again, if you got questions, please hit us in the chat. If I'm going a little fast, please, hit me with a question. But our slides and source code, they're all on GitHub, MSUS Dev, end to end, CI/CD. Every single thing I'm showing you is on GitHub, is on open source. So I'm not doing anything that you can't copy, paste, and pull down yourself. All right. So we're going to use our existing Azure Pipelines YAML file that we've been writing up until now. Here it is right here. Pending no typos, we'll hit run. All right, we're going to build our project assets, make sure everything looks good. And there we go. We're initializing our container just like we did earlier. And things are looking good so far. So we initialize our container, then we're going to check out our code. We're going to publish our .NET Console project. And the intention here is that even though it's published in the .NET Console project, oh no, I do have a typo somewhere. Let's see. What do I have? So it looks like I missed one of my slashes. Usually when you see a command not found in front of a flag, that means you missed one of your line escapes. Let's check out which one I missed. I missed all of them. That is very unfortunate. This lets Bash know that this is a multi-line command. This is very unfortunate. All right. Publish .NET Console project. I knew I was due for an error. No worries. Oh, and we're kicking it up. Here we go. Publish on .NET Console project. Build project assets. Give that a second to kick up. Here we go. Downloaded the container. And there we go. We're going to publish .NET Console project in the hopes I have no typos this time. All right, restored the project. Release .NET 6.0 WinX 64. All right, looking promising so far. And that's a green check mark. It published it to the out folder, so everything looks good. We got it right. Perfect. All right, let's talk a little bit more about what we can do here. So we look like we successfully built this project asset, but because the agent was destroyed, we don't have any access to that exe file. So once the agent's done, it's gone. There's no access to that file. I want to be able to download that exe file, play around with it, or maybe one of my coworkers wants to do that. So we need to be able to take these artifacts that are created by our build processes and upload them and download them. And there are steps that allow us to do that. Now these are actually pretty simple. These are upload download steps. And I wish I could tell you that the syntax was incredibly complex, but uh, for this example, there it is, publish. That's the name of the task that you use to, and it's a shorthand for the publish build artifact step. And the last time I delivered this webinar, it was a really complex and long syntax. And they've made it so much easier. So we know that in the out folder, there's a contoso spaces console.exe file. And we know that we can give the artifact a name. I'll call it console app. And we also know that we can give this as display name. Upload console app artifact. That's it. That's all we need. These three lines. So publish tells us what to get. Artifact is what we want to name it. And the display name is just universal. So we're going to save it, create publish artifact, sync changes. And it's a little unfortunate that .NET publish is using the same verb as the actual publish build artifact. But yeah, I feel like everybody's following along. We could forgive that one, right? So we're going in, we're going to build our project assets. And I just want you to see what the experience looks like from this end. So we're going to initialize that job one more time, and that's going to spin up pretty quickly. And then the idea is we have this extra step here right after the project is published, where we're going to take the result of that publishing, that exe file, and we're going to create an artifact. Now, artifact is something that exists beyond the build. It allows us to go and grab results of the build. And this is useful if we need to go use it in another job, if we just need something that we need to download and review, analyze. There's just lots of different reasons why we want build artifacts, and we want to we want to analyze them, we want to use them, we want to manipulate them. So looks like our job is wrapping up. If we go to our job, we see that one artifact was produced as a result of this job. If I click on it, we'll see we have an artifact called console app. It's about 34 megs. I told you that it would be megabytes. I told you it'd be big because we're including the whole .NET framework in this. Contoso Spaces console. Now here's interesting. I didn't sign this, remember? So Edge, as smart as it is, says, Mr. Andrews, this is an exe file that's unsigned that's going to run code from the internet. Are you off your rocker? Yes, I'm absolutely off my rocker. Okay. This goes against every privacy policy. Um okay. All right. If you want to run it, we just want to make sure that you know what you're doing here. All right. I agree that I take responsibility for my computer launching into space. So Contoso Spaces console.exe on my downloads folder. There it is. It's there. I just downloaded it from my artifacts. So it's just pretty cool that we're able to just get the results of our build pipeline there. Let's take this a step further. I want to show you another concept here that you're gonna really like. So we just did a .NET Publish. I want to show you a .NET Pack. Um, if you're not familiar, there's lots of really cool NuGet tools out there. There's NuGet tools to for common things like if you want to query your API URL. There's NuGet tools. Some of them are like for ASCII art. You can build your own NuGet tools. And if you build your own NuGet tool, it's basically a command .NET console application that you build as a command line app. And all you do is just .NET pack it and then publish it to NuGet. So normally you'll go to NuGet.org, create an account, and then just upload it manually in the portal. But if you use .NET Pack and then .NET NuGet Push, then you can do it from the command line. So if we know how to do it for the command line, then we can do it using Azure pipelines. So that's the demo I want to walk through to really nail this in. So .NET Pack is pretty simple. It's .NET Pack with an output folder, and then we like to version. This just ensures that we know exactly which version of the package this is. This gets really important on the NuGet side of things. Um, NuGet publishing. A couple things I really want to highlight before we go into this demo pretty deeply. You can distribute your console applications. Your .NET console applications is .NET tools. The biggest thing you want to do is make sure you set up some project properties because that's what NuGet reads to determine features of the .NET tools. Biggest difference is you use .NET Pack instead of .NET Publish. Once you package it, it'll create a new package or NUPKG, and then that's what you publish to NuGet.org. And then there's a version property in your .NET project. That's what determines the NuGet package version. And just like how you can change that in your project file, or you can change that from the command line, you can do the same thing here with .NET Pack. So let's walk through that. So just jumping back in, we have our project, and I'm going to just .NET Pack output TKG. So it's going to use all the metadata here, like package tool, the tool command name, the package output path to determine where to send this. It's going to create this PKG folder, and it's going to use version 1.00 since I don't have a version specified. If I had a version specified, it would use that instead. If I had a folder specified here, it would use that. So the it kind of has like a priority order. I believe it goes CS project, then command line. So let me show you an example. If we just do .NET Pack, it's going to create, if I remember correctly, a package folder using 300 because it uses the data in the CS project file. If I go .NET Pack output super package key version 4 equals 4.0.0, I override what's in that project file. So you see there's multiple places where we can specify this. So what you'll find over time is that it's more common to see some defaults specified in the CS project file. Some common sense defaults is the term I've seen thrown around a lot. And then in your Azure pipeline, you override things like the version and the folder based upon what makes sense in your in that particular build. So for today's demo, we're going to hard code version 1.0.0, and we're just going to allow NuGet to overwrite 1.0.0 as many times as necessary. In a actual production build, we're probably not going to do that. For the people who just joined, by the way, please enter any questions you got in the chat. We have slides and source code on GitHub. Everything I'm typing out, everything I'm showing is open source, including all the code I'm showing. It's all on GitHub. All right, so I'm nervous because this is one of my favorite demos to show. So let's dive into this. We're still in the same build job. We're going to build two project assets. We already built our exe file. We're going to build another project asset. We're going to write another script. This time, we're going to .NET Pack. And for .NET Pack, we're going to output PKG folder, since we know that's in our get ignore file. And we're going to set the version hard coded to 1.0.0. Our display name is going to be package.net tool. And then we're going to do the same exact thing that we did for our exe. We're going to publish this. So we're going to say pkg contoso the spaces console .100.new package. We're going to put the display name for the step to be upload package artifact. And we're going to call this artifact NuGet package. Save, create NuGet package. I thought I didn't make any. Oh, let me undo this change to the CS project file. That was unintentional. I thought I undid the change. I apologize. So the big change to my integration YAML file is to add these two steps. One is to run .NET Pack, and one is to upload that NuGet package as an artifact of my build steps. So let's send it. Let's sync these changes up. We're going to go to Azure Pipelines, check how we're doing, check how things are cooking. There we go. All right. Whew. So while this is cooking, I want to talk a bit about where we're going from here. So we are building two project assets. We're building an exe for our console application. Not just our dev team can go grab from Azure Pipelines whenever they want. And we're building a NuGet package. This one we intend to release on NuGet.org. This one is for the general public. Now we're going to create a second job, which is a release job that connects to NuGet.org using .NET NuGet Push, and this will actually push to NuGet.org. This one requires a little bit of finesse, but the great thing is that we're gonna have a little bit of fun. So we packaged the .NET tool, we uploaded that as a package artifact. Everything looks good. Job's finishing up. It produced two artifacts, the NuGet package and the console app. Both of them are available for download just by clicking here. Everything's good. We everything's great. So we have successfully completed our this really simple build job. So we are going to start working on a NuGet release job. I'm pretty excited about that. So starting from the top, I want to start researching how to release stuff on NuGet because there's a couple of nuances to this. The first one is if you go look in the documentation for publishing and downloading artifacts, NuGet, you'll notice something really interesting. And I bring this up because this is something that comes up a lot when I'm talking to people about this. And this is actually something that's in the description box for this video. If you ever want to go look at it, there's documentation for all of these. By the way, every single thing I've shown you here is in the description box. If you go to publish and download pipeline artifacts, you'll see here's how to publish an artifact. The only thing I added difference, I added display name because I love using display names. If you go to download artifacts, the only difference is instead of publish, we go download. And what you want to download, we decide whether we want to do a specific pipeline run or the current pipeline run. For our purposes, we'll do the current pipeline run. Now, that's fine. But if you go down here, there's a documentation note that you can miss easily. By default, files are downloaded to pipeline.workspace. I want to say that one more time. They're downloaded to Pipeline Workspace. Notice that's not your current working directory. If an artifact name is not specified, a subdirectory will be created for each downloaded artifact. Now, if you weren't reading the documentation very carefully, you'd write your pipeline and then you would never find your artifact once we download it in a new job. And then we'll run into this situation where we upload our artifacts, but we'll never be able to use them in another job because we can't find them. So knowing this information, we can create a brand new job that can download this artifact and then use it. And I'm going to just walk you through that because we got about 10 to 15 minutes remaining in this webinar and just want to show you what that looks like. So we have one job to build. And by the way, a couple people just joined. All of our source code for everything we've done it so far is on GitHub. Um, we're going to create a brand new job. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to call this job release. Display name, release on NuGet. I'm going to put this in the middle screen so everybody can see. This job depends on build. We need build to run first before we can release the NuGet. And you know what? Since we're going to continue to use the .NET CLI, I'm okay running this in the same container. Microsoft, maybe not the same instance, but I definitely want to run it on the same type of container. So the .NET SDK 6 container, perfectly fine. For the steps, the most important step, the first step, download step. Using the current pipeline, I want to download the NuGet package artifact. And just like we've done with every other step, we're going to put a nice display name, download package artifact. So we're going to add a new job, and this is just a sanity check. We're going to send this. I'm clicking too fast. We're going to send this to Azure Pipelines and make sure everything looks good before we move on. So just again, any questions, just throw them in the chat. We're just jumping up. I think everybody's just rocking with us today. We are having a lot of fun. So going in, we're just doing this. Yeah, I think everybody senses how close we are to the finish line. Our rebuilding project assets release on NuGet. I'm not going to make you stare at the screen because here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to NuGet. All right, so I have a NuGet account. I'm going to go to API keys. You know what? I have a example key and I'm going to delete it. I'm going to create a new key. I'm going to call this really fun key. Awesome sauce. All right. Expires tomorrow. Now, this key has the ability to push to any package. Now, here's really cool best practice for NuGet. When you haven't pushed your package yet, you can set the glob pattern to asterisk or wildcard. And then once you push the package for the first time, you can go back and update the key to only allow to push only new package versions to that specific package. So before you push it for the first time, give it the ability to push to any package and then update it to only push new versions to the specific package you want. That's just a NuGet specific thing. Probably completely unnecessary to this webinar, but it's just really fun thing if you're new, if you haven't done an API key for NuGet before. All right, so I'm gonna copy my API key for NuGet. Go to Azure Pipelines. Oh, our project assets are rolling. NuGet's already on a release job. You know what? I'm gonna hang around because the only thing we're doing is downloading the package asset artifact. So let's see. Let's that shouldn't take too long. We're already getting our container. So container spun up. So gonna check out the code. Well, that's one of the cool things about Azure Pipelines. You don't actually have to tell it to check out the code like you do with GitHub Actions. Here we go. Let's download downloaded our package artifact to the pipeline work folder / NuGet package. That's going to become interesting later. And the size matched what we saw when we looked at that build artifacts earlier. Okay, perfect. Now I have my API key, so I'm going to go to pipelines. I'm going to select my pipeline. I'm going to do something really interesting. I'm going to hit edit. Now I'm not going to edit the YAML. I'm going to click variables up here. I'm going to create a new variable. Now I can create just a key value setting for this variable, but I'm going to hit keep this value secret. Going to type in my value. I'm going to call this NuGet API key. I'm going to hit OK. Now this allows me to use this NuGet API key in my script. Now this is just a really simple setting. There's a lot more complicated ways of doing this and stuff, but for today this is going to be really great. So what I'm copying to the clipboard is not the value of this, but the reference. So if I hit copy here, just to open Notepad to show you, um, I'm copying the reference NuGet API key and hit save. And now I have a variable called NuGet API key. Perfect. Now, just go back to my pipelines. Everything looks good there. Pipeline ran perfectly. I only need one step. It's going to be a script. This is going to be .NET NuGet push. And then this is the script to rule them all. It's going to be contoso.spaces.console 1.0.0 dot let me type it out, new package, new line, skip duplicate because just in case there's a duplicate already on NuGet.org. I'm gonna pass in my API key. Remember, we have the reference to that. And then my source, this is going to be HTTPS. And this is all NuGet specific stuff, so I'm not going to bore you with the documentation on it because it's not really relevant to Azure Pipelines. API NuGet.org, v3 index.json. We're going to specify a display name. And if I save this and sync it up, it will not work. Because remember what I told you earlier is that the package artifact was sent to a special folder per our documentation, the pipeline.workspace folder / NuGet package. So we need to change the working directory of just this one script by setting its working directory to pipeline.workspace / NuGet package. And if I don't have any typos, publish NuGet package, save, commit. Oh, I keep clicking commit too fast. That's okay. This is excitement. You can see I'm ready to publish this NuGet package and get this out into the wild. All right. Pending no typos, we're going to jump in. All right. We're building our project assets. It's building our containers. And again, if you got any questions, throw them in the chat. Um, if you're watching this after the fact, you can throw questions in YouTube comments, msusdev at Microsoft.com. You can send us questions there. If you're looking for the source code of slides, GitHub.com, msusdev, NCICD. We definitely, love putting these together. It's lots of fun to be able to share all this with you. As you tell, kind of, getting close to the end. If you want to pull down a sample application, we have this available on GitHub. It's a template, so you can clone this or copy this into your own repository and do all sorts of cool stuff. All right, looks like our build is done. We've created 2 artifacts. All right. If I don't have any typos or any silly mistakes, we should be running through a release process on a new agent where we're going to download that package artifact and push it to NuGet.org. To my NuGet account as a .NET tool. So there we go, download our container, checking out the code, even though that's not entirely necessary. Download our package artifact, push it to NuGet.org. So I should be getting an email now from NuGet letting me know a new version of this package has been pushed. So I've been testing before this webinar. So if I go to manage packages, I have a couple other projects here. Contoso Spaces.console, latest version 1.0.0. So to validate that this worked, I should just be able to from .NET CLI, .NET tool install globally, contoso.spaces.console version 1.0.0. All right. So I should just be able to invoke Contoso Spaces. There we go. Contoso Spaces seats 5. I should be able to uninstall it. .NET tool uninstall global Contoso Spaces console. And there we go. We used Azure pipelines to build a console application, publish it to NuGet.org automatically, and do it all within an hour. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff for one day. We still have another session coming up in this series. We went over Azure pipelines one more time. We automated a console app, built it in 2 different modalities. Really exciting stuff. I'm almost exhausted from this excitement because we still have a lot to show you. In our 3rd session, we're going to go over a lot of the same concept, but we're going to do it with a web application. We're going to Dockerize that web application. We're going to push it to various Azure services using a lot of these same concepts. But instead of using like the .NET CLI, we'll use Azure and focus a lot on that. So we'll review a lot of stuff we did today, but we'll change the context. So instead of .NET, the context will be Azure, and you'll see how a lot of the principles that we went over today, map over almost identical and almost exactly the same. Um, Lots of links. All these links that you see on the screen today, they are almost no, not almost. They're all in the description box on this YouTube video. So please, check out all these links. Every single thing here I'm showing you, we went over today. You got to see in action. I hope you get to go in, try out yourself, play around with. Um, if you haven't already, go to Microsoft Learn. Try out our Learn path. We have pretty good Learn module. Ooh, sorry, I clicked that too fast. We have pretty good Learn modules. You can go get hands on yourself, try this stuff out. Really excited for you to just try stuff out. I'll play around with it. As always, msusdev at Microsoft.com if you got questions. And we have links to our slides and source code in the description box. Um, any questions? If you got any questions, throw them in the chat. I'm gonna put the chat on the side for just a second in case anybody has questions. If not, I'm gonna just jump offline. But other than that, really appreciate everybody coming on today. We are really appreciative of this series. We'll see you all same time next week for the final session, and then we have a super final a happy hour session where we're going to speed run all three sessions. So if you have any colleagues who've missed one or two sessions or are going to miss all three, we have a speed run session coming up next week where we'll cover I'll call it a subset of the content in all three sessions. We'll cover like the surface area. So like the general of all three sessions, but not exactly the details of all three sessions. So we'll build the same app and cover fundamentally what we're covering in all three sessions, but not as in depth as you could in 4 hours, right? So in the happy hour session, it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be definitely a different vibe. So if we have that, it's up on YouTube with a placeholder, and we'll go live sometime next week on that too. So really looking forward to it, and we'll see you all then.